everyone. Last night I watched Doctor Strange, and right after I watched it, I recorded like a 40-minute video to talk to you guys about it. And there's nothing good in it. Nothing good in my video. Actually, the movie itself is pretty decent. But the weird thing is I liked it until I didn't like it anymore. So let's talk about it, because this movie kind of confuses me, and I'm not quite sure how I feel about it. Let's see how this goes. Now, before we get started, please put your comments down below. Tell me what you feel about this movie. Did you like it? Are you conflicted like me? Or was it just something that you really enjoyed? I do remember watching this movie. I watched it with a client of mine when I was working in a home for mentally handicapped people. This client, he couldn't talk to me, but other than he could say little words. And if I told him, do you want to go see a movie? He would say, movie. He loved movies. So, and he'd get really excited about it. He may have liked the popcorn more than he liked the movie, but either way, he loved to go. So I would take him to a movie probably once a month, sometimes more often than that. And it was a really fun kind of perk of the job, and something that he really enjoyed, in a place where I could keep an eye on him. He was considered dangerous. He just needed someone to love on him. I really enjoyed working with him for that time in my life. But either way, I saw this movie with him. However, I don't remember the movie, and that's maybe he needed to go use the restroom a couple times during it. I don't know. I don't remember almost any of it, but there were a couple poignant scenes where I went, oh, yep, I watched that. This movie, I liked it definitely a lot more this time than I did at that point, because while I was watching it at that point, it didn't make a lot of sense to me. Which is kind of a common theme. It still doesn't make a lot of sense, but I don't know. Let's just talk about it. All right, so this movie... It starts off with basically a heist. I think every single Marvel movie starts off with a heist. There are these monks that have come into a library with some manuscripts, something like that, and they try to steal this book of spells. They steal one page out of it, or a couple different pages out of it, and then they get out of there after they behead the guy who's basically like the curator of the books. I don't even know if I'm using the right words there. Who cares? And then you see Tilda Swinton, who has come in, and she's going to destroy all the guys, or she's going to try to fight off all these guys, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Even from the very beginning here, I just was going, so, okay, she's like bending the world. Like, this is very much universe-breaking kind of magic. So, to me, it's kind of like, anything can happen, right? There's no rules, but the entire movie, I think, is about breaking rules, knowing when to break rules, knowing how to break rules, because you find out even Tilda Swinton, who is basically like the head guru, you find out after some pretty solid exposition that she has been breaking rules this whole time. And the reason why Doctor Strange, in the end, basically wins-ish in this movie is because he was willing to break rules to destroy these people who were trying to do bad things. I don't know. The people he destroys are also people who were rule breakers too. So there's a lot of conflicting messages here. But overall, what I got from the whole thing is that rules do not always have to make sense, and that sometimes it is best to break those rules to accomplish additional means. So it is a bit of a confusing message. It's also not a terribly bad message. It's definitely a postmodern tale, something where no character is 100% black and white, which fits in well with the Marvel universe. But I guess let's just get into the story a little bit here. So we start out right at the very beginning with basically a mixture of like every TV doctor that you've ever seen, which is Doctor Strange. And his name is Doctor Strange, which is just a little bit on the heavy-handed side for me. He is a neurosurgeon, and basically we're meant to like him for his unlikability to some degree. Once again, kind of fits in with the Marvel mantra. I mean, you've got this incredibly cocky guy who thinks he has a big brain, and then he ends up having some sort of superpowers, and you kind of have his perception of himself challenged through his superpower, through the superpowers that he acquires. We've seen this a little bit in the past, so I mean, yeah, it fits in. Anyway, we find out about him through quite a bit of shorthand. Again, very good. This movie was very concise in how they make you understand about the character. He's also kind of in love or been in some sort of relationship with Rachel McAdams before, so clearly he is the man all men want to be and all women want to be with if he can get Rachel McAdams. Everyone wants to date Regina George, right? As he's going along, you see how self-aggrandizing he is, but he is also understandably so. He's very smart, very good at what he does, uses his hands very well for the surgeries that he does. One day he is driving back home and driving incredibly fast in his extremely expensive sports car, and he goes off the side of a cliff after answering like a text message, basically. At that point, we find him back in the hospital, and he has incredibly messed up hands that is basically his obstacle for the rest of this movie. So now he's hit rock bottom. He's losing his apartment. He's packed up his boxes. He is, and the apartment that he has is a beautiful apartment that was overlooking Manhattan, but he no longer has that life because he is no longer a neurosurgeon because he can't be. And Rachel McAdams comes in and tries to take care of him and to love him, and he basically just turns her away, doesn't want her pity. He, at this point, pretty clearly has nothing that he views as is worth living for. And he basically goes to a couple other different countries on a search for some people who he had helped before. One guy who, in particular, he had helped with the neurosurgery. This guy went to Eastern medicine and Eastern religion for kind of a respite back from the trauma he'd gone through. And after he was able to fix his brain, apparently that was able to help fix his dexterity, and now he can play sports and things like that. Strange decides he is going to go check out Eastern medicine also, and comes into this guru girl, Tilda Swinton, who helps him to see the world in a very different way than he had ever seen the world before. Throughout this movie, there is some great acting. Actually, I already glossed over it, but when Doctor Strange wakes up from a coma and sees his hands and Rachel McAdams is there, their acting together and their chemistry together is fantastic. They are very good. I do think that Benedict Cumberbatch seems quite a bit too old for Rachel McAdams. Take that for what it's worth. It's Hollywood. That's what happens. I mean, you can be a 60-year-old guy with a 25-year-old girlfriend. So, like I said, take that for what it's worth. This movie is very good at character development. Him dealing with his hands, you have seen very efficiently how important his hands were to him. And he has just lost all of what mattered anything to him. There were some poignant parts where Doctor Strange asks or says none of this makes sense, and the guru girl, Tilda, the White Witch, says that you don't have to understand everything. So there's a lot about faith in this movie, a lot of a discussion about the importance of faith and that you don't have to understand everything, which as a person of faith myself resonates with me. So I understood that, and I cared to explore that idea more. But then when you get into battles where I know that we are a part of the MCU, it gets to the point where you're going, wait a minute, None of this makes sense because at least within the glass room, you could not affect the rest of the universe. You could only affect what was happening in that room itself. It's almost like its own little force field. That has some semblance of sense to where that will not affect every other character. But when you start doing it outside of that, when you start bending matter outside of that space, it becomes completely confusing because at what point would anyone ever have the upper hand? You can't ever find where the upper hand is. And this is where I started to get real cognitive dissonance and started to realize that I couldn't enjoy this movie anymore because I didn't know, I had no barometer on which to judge like who may be getting the upper hand. You have no idea what's happening. Skyscrapers are changing directions. You never know literally which way is up or down. You don't know what's happening. So again, there is no visual way to perceive who has the upper hand. So when someone dies, they die based on what feels like just an arbitrary whim to want them to die for the sake of the story or for whatever the writers had in mind. So it ends up being something where this movie starts out with some great character development, fight through everything. And like, even it's so poignant just to watch him not be able to shave and then to watch him struggle to shave, but actually be able to after he had learned a lot in his studies. And then, of course, during that, they had to have their gratuitous shirtless scene because that's what these movies do. Watching these characters grow and change, especially watching Benedict Cumberbatch grow and change, was fascinating. But trying to understand the mechanics of the world itself, and especially looking to the way it's going to change the future of the Avengers, really becomes problematic in watching it and trying to understand this universe. Either way, this movie has a good side, and then it has a side where it's frustrating at best, and difficult for me to watch, just because, again, there's this arbitrary nature to it, where when I watch Doctor Strange fighting against his main adversary, I don't really care. I'm kind of bored with the fight because I don't know whether you have the high ground, whether you seem to be winning or you seem to be losing. So to me, I'd rather almost just skip over the fight altogether because there's nothing that I'm learning about the way he fights or the way he can use this magic for his favor. Anyway, like I said, let me know how you guys feel about this movie. I certainly didn't hate it, and it's probably, it's not the lowest on my list, but it probably is somewhat low on my list. Again, though, I didn't hate it. I liked it for its character development, but it's not one of my favorites. So how do you guys feel about Doctor Strange? What do you think about the way this movie works and the points that I brought up? Maybe to you, you're just like, it's just a movie, Trent. Just enjoy it. And that's fine. Leave that down in the comments if you want. I will talk to you all later. Please like, subscribe, and comment down below. We're growing pretty quickly at this point, and we can grow even faster because 90% of you guys are not subscribed who are watching these videos. So subscribe, press that red subscribe button, give me a chance, and I will talk to you all later. Thank you so much. Have a great day.